So I won't go through any more introductions because Andy already said I'm an MVP and an MCT certified. I've come from the SharePoint background, which is why I've been so connected to this user group for a while. But things have evolved. There's my Instagram handle as well. Andy already showed my Twitter handle. I have a very active YouTube channel, and I do pretty much all things Power Platform. And so if you just go and search on YouTube for Daniel Christian Power Apps, Power Automate MVP, you'll pretty much find my stuff over there. And if you don't mind, go ahead and click on subscribe, and I'll tell you another new gig I've going on in Power Apps. I mean, in YouTube specifically. In fact, I put a link in the chat. I put the link in the chat. If you click on that, it's actually now a join my YouTube channel. That's a new thing where if you join my YouTube channel, I actually give you first priority, give you some early insight, and I also spend some time answering your questions. So if you're interested in that, take a look at that link. All right, so I'm going to spend about the next 35-40 minutes just talking about Power Automate for desktop. Do a little bit of slides, introduce that to you, and then I want to just jump into the demo piece, like open up the the desktop console, and I've got some nice demos ready for you as well. So the whole concept of Power Automate for desktop, it is an extension of the cloud flow. So that's why we talk about Power Automate desktop, but that's an extension of the cloud flow. There's cloud, and then there's the desktop. So that's one of the things. Now, the reason the desktop flow comes into play is because it does broaden the existing robotic process automation. So you'll hear me say the term RPA a lot. That's what it is, robotic process automation. Because now you can go ahead and build, and it gets very familiar with the terms called attended and unattended flows, but you'll be able to build these flows that will do the work for you on your desktop. And it is applicable for all of these reasons. Great examples is self-employed business persons extracting information from vendor invoices. I'll show you a demo of that. These type of automations, if you're a type of person with small businesses or single person running an entire business, you want more of these automation processes. RPA, Power Automate's RPAs is a really good one. The big popularity of this one is that last bullet item. It says it allows you to automate legacy applications such as terminal emulators and desktop applications. Believe it or not, there is still a big amount of legacy applications out there, which was one of the biggest reasons why Power Automate for desktop was even introduced. Shockingly, there are not a whole lot of companies which have always been, cloud first, mobile first. There's only these new upcoming companies do that. There's still a lot of companies which have homegrown legacy applications, no APIs whatsoever, proprietary databases that you just cannot touch. Well, then for something like that, you need this type of application, and I have a demo for that as well. So that was actually one of the biggest reasons. The last one, it allows you to automate legacy applications, for desktop applications, things like that. All right. What I do want to do is cover a little bit of the architecture. Now, I'm not going to go deep dive too much into it, but I want to bring this to your attention for some two really cool information that has happened. Because if this is the first time that you're hearing about Power Automate for desktop, there was actually an evolution in this altogether, specifically on the on-premises gateway. So here we go. In the Power Automate desktop software, when you actually download and install it, there is something called as UI Flow Service. It's actually a Windows service that is running. What this service does is it actually goes ahead and allows your desktop, the integration of your desktop, to talk to the Azure, and that's how the whole connection goes in. Outgoing web requests, the Azure Relay, which is kind of the initial junction point, we'll go ahead and then talk to from there, it will go and talk to the automated cloud services, the Power Automate. Like, this is how the entire thing happened. Now, there was a distinct requirement at this time. You had the Power Automate desktop as one section running in a machine, but in addition to that, you also needed what's called as an on-premises gateway connection. That gateway connection was what basically made the integration piece from your desktop over to the cloud. So you basically needed the Power Automate desktop software, and then you needed also the on-premises gateway. So this is basically how the architecture design was. Then they came out with a newer version on this thing, and that is what really caught my attention. In fact, this is what really got me motivated to do that as well. They went ahead and now implemented the on-premises gateway directly inside the Power Automate for desktop, which is why if this is the first time that you're going to start doing this, you can go ahead and download a fresh copy of Power Automate for desktop, install it, sign in, and that's it. You do not need to take this additional step of on-premises gateway connection. This might sound very simple, or as I was saying, okay, this doesn't sound, but trust me, this was a huge step forward. It saved a lot of problems in integration. Sometimes there would be the two informations, the services talking to each other were sometimes not very cohesive. This just erased all of those problems. It made it so much more easier. So this was a big motivation for me to go in and start actually engaging on the next version of the Power Automate for desktop. And then when I also upgraded straight to, I mean, I started testing this from a Windows 10 perspective, but then when I upgraded myself to a Windows 11, it just got so much more smoother on that. So let's kind of build upon this whole architecture side, and let's also talk a little bit about the concept of attended and unattended. You will hear this terminology a lot in different aspects. You will hear it from how do you want to build a flow? How do you want to pay for this flow? What is the payment for that? How do you want to go and get the subscription for that? When you talk about Power Automate for desktop, you will hear this a lot. By the way, you also hear the terminology PAD, Power Automate Desktop. It used to be called Power Automate for desktop. The term PAD is still very common, but it's actually changed that a little loosely. It's now called, Microsoft officially calls it as Power Automate for desktop. They don't like to use the term PAD for so many reasons, because it's technically so much more than that. So the technical term is Power Automate for desktop, but still very loosely, and then just so you don't have to type the whole thing. PAD also works out that way. And then there's the attended and unattended. So let's look at the difference between the two. All right, so you have unattended on the left, and you've got the unattended. So basically, any of these automation and configuration methods that you want to do, you can do it either attended or unattended. So let's actually start looking at some of the key differences between the two. All right, attended, as the name suggests, requires human interaction or decision makings, while unattended does not. So if you look at the image, the little image that I have over here, that when you've got unattended, it's almost as if the robot or the bot does something, then it waits for you to do something else. Then the bot does something, then it waits for you to do something else. Like, that's the whole process of the attended. The bot is basically attending to your needs. It's there, it's waiting for you, and you just have a really good cohesive interaction between with it. Unattended, as again name suggests, the bot does not need your presence altogether. It will only go ahead. It will go ahead and do the whole thing for you. So if some of you are already thinking and your wheels are turning, you're kind of already on point over there. Attended flows, and you just cannot take an attended flow and automatically make it unattended. You just can't make an unattended flow and just automatically make it unattended. The two are completely separate logic designs. And it's not that the one is more easier than the other one. You just have to build upon that, where, okay, if I'm going to wait for a bot to do something, and then I need to do something, well, then the steps on that flow will be a little bit more different than the unattended ones. Just don't, this is misconception that, oh, I'll just take my unattended and make it attended and it'll just work. Well, yes, you can. If you change the logic, you can do that, but there's some work involved. The overall logic of the bot, the flow is completely different. The great example over here. Attended one, it is manually triggered. In fact, all the demos that I'm going to show you over here are completely attended work, because we're going to trigger it over here. But I can also schedule my flows that come in, and I can just go and say completely unattended. So I can do it both ways, but making sure that if it is purely attended, manually triggered, which I'll be demoing. Unattended can be automatically triggered. It can be triggered based on a trigger of some connector, which is an email coming in or something happening, or you just schedule it. You can do it either one of those ways. And here's something which I put it in over here because sometimes it's not really easily understood. When you are making attended flows, no other sign-in or authentication steps or actions are required, because the bot automatically factors in that you are there, you've signed into your machine. So for any of the actions and steps that you're going to do, it will use your credentials for that. Granted, if you're using some other connectors, the connectors will need its own connection and authentication. But for all these other steps that you're doing in your machine, like clicking on a desktop file, opening a folder, all of that, it will do it as if you, the sign-in user, is doing and initiating all that steps. And because it is attended, it doesn't need any other additional sign-in. Unattended gets a little bit more interesting, because remember, there's nobody in that machine, and it's not just you hit a Control Alt Delete and received out. You actually have to sign out. So you have to go ahead and click on that taskbar, click on the signing out. Don't shut down. You got to sign out, and then the bot will already have the flow authentication that you use to do all of that. So there's a lot more flexibility also when you make unattended flows, because at that time now you're not in the machine signed in. So you could actually train the bot saying that, hey, if I want you to use these credentials. Therefore, there's actually lots of scenarios where people have actually created dedicated machines to go ahead and run these unattended ones. And they've got dedicated service accounts over there, and like build a full process for unattended, dedicated virtual machines, dedicate all that. It works really well. And then they've also dedicated service accounts for that. So that's the whole concept of the attended. But overall, these were the three big ones. There's some subtle differences, other minor points, but these are the two big ones I want to talk about. So quick recap is, the human interface and the decisions is called as the attended one, where you are going to help the bot in steps. But when the situation where the bot needs no assistance whatsoever, the robotic process automation needs no assistance, it will go ahead and do that completely as an unattended one. So there's some more things involved in that though. For example, the licenses. Now, I'm not going to be talking about, well, how the licenses work and what are the actions and what is the cost. No, that's not what I'm here for. What I want you to know is this key thing over there. Per cloud or desktop flow. If you've got your Power Apps, Power Automate, per user license, or if you've got the full Power Apps license. Basically, if you've got those licenses, the full one, not your M365 one, dedicated Power Apps per user, Power Automate per user, you've got those licenses. Guess what? You are already licensed to build the Power Automate for desktop attended mode. You've already got that. It's the unattended that requires a separate licensing. And this is what actually a lot of people don't know. This is also what a lot of people get excited with, because they'll say like, Daniel, we've already got a few Power Automate per user licenses that we've been using for stuff. Now I could actually start using the attended one too, where users are there, click on something, drink their coffee, let the bot do all this stuff like I'll be showing you. So you're already licensed for that. So this is the beautiful one. Unattended is that little bit extra that comes up. So let's talk about the unattended one. For the unattended flow, basically, when you're going to go and start building these licenses specifically for the unattended, you can actually go ahead and have these different licensing plans. So you see the one for the, let me go to the unattended one actually, right here. The unattended one, it is $150 per bot per month. And then these are the type of things which get included with this. First of all, you can build, the unattended mode one, and it also gives you some additional AI builder credits. Now, the AI builder is a whole separate session altogether. Probably I'll cover that somewhere in the future. But I'll just tell you, as a quick overview, having those service credits is very important for you to do AI builder training. Specifically because it's all based on these credits over there. So when you are buying, first of all, this amount, which is, it is an amount. You're paying $150 per bot per month to do these unattended unattended flows, but they've thrown in this other nice functionality of, hey, I'm going to give you some AI builder credits as well, because you might want to do more AI bot training, you might want to do more automation. This is what it is. But here's something else that gets a lot of people excited as well, because that $150 per month for small businesses is a little hard to swallow. This is a lot more easier. I've actually done a lot more testing. In fact, I do all of mine here. I personally have built my own invoice processing, a demo that I'll be showing you. This is what I use, because this is a lot more easier for me to swallow. Also, it just depends on the amount of use of my bots. Because remember, the overall cost is coming up to $150 per month, or it is going to be either of these things. The moment you start getting close to the amount, then you decide, okay, I'm at a point where that $150 gets cheaper. Otherwise, what you do is based on your Azure subscription plan. So for all of you who might already be familiar with Azure subscriptions for SQL or Azure SQL or creating VMs or all that, you understand what the subscription model is. Now, forget about Microsoft. In general what subscription model is, right? We subscribe for Hulu, we go ahead and subscribe for all these other things. That is the whole subscription model. In the subscription model for Azure, that's what you do is you go ahead and say, I'm going to keep this much money aside. I'm going to subscribe for it on the cloud, and I'll be going ahead and doing it per flow basis. So it's not on a per month. It's not on a per user. It is tied to a per run. So on your left side, that's what it is. Like if you're going to go ahead and do a, even the attended ones, you can go and do a 60 cent per flow. And that's basically what it is, the attended mode. However, if you're going to do an unattended mode, you want to build these flows and you don't want to pay that $150 per bot per month, then the $3 per flow actually works out a lot cheaper. This is what I'm actually doing right now because I cannot afford that $150. And that's what it is. And towards the end, I will actually go into my Azure subscription, my real life Azure subscription, and I'll show you the analytics of how it is actually going and broken that down. So this is actually one of the things that does get people excited because sometimes if they've done their own homework and they've got, this is what basically is your stopping point, they get disappointed and they completely ignore it. But I want you to go past this and I want you to see this. Like this is affordable. This is doable. And so you can start doing that even with your existing M365 license that you might have, your M365 Power Automate. You could just go to your Azure subscription, and you know what? Some of these Azure subscriptions, people get free $150 credits, $200 credits. In that case, if you've got those credits, you're not even going to pay for this. You will leverage those connectors, that credits. So you basically have all the tools that you might already have all the tools that you need to start playing and testing with this. Cool. So I want to move forward now and actually just spend some time on the entire thing altogether. So this is what your overall Power Automate for desktop is going to look like. So I'll just put this image over here because this is my image from my machine. But let's just jump straight into this. All right. So I'm going to go now. Yep, I'll come back to you. This is my Windows 11 machine. All right. So in my Windows 11 machine, and in yours as well, you might have a Windows 10 or Windows 11 machine. Power Automate for desktop is built into your operating system. So right now, if you've got a Windows 11 machine, you basically just go to your search, you start typing in Power, you will automatically get a full best match of Power Automate. This is the Power Automate for desktop machine. Now, I want to share some information with you. If you have not done any updates to your Power Automate for desktop, which comes with your Windows 11, like that's the first version of it, you are going to run into a few problems with what's called as the recording functionality. The recorder is you turn it on and it'll record the steps for you. The exact same type of recording technology we use in Excel. Go click over here. It's like recording everything. Power Automate for desktop has that same functionality. But if you've got that built-in Windows 11 Power Automate for desktop, it doesn't have that functionality. So you will have to go ahead and actually get the latest version of it. My recommendation is that you actually download the latest version. It comes in as an exe file, and you just install it. You don't have to do any uninstallation. You just install it. It overwrites it with the latest version. But you'll actually notice it. If you've got a Windows 11 machine, go to your programs, and you will see like a small 7 or a 10 or 11 meg file over there. But when they actually download the full Power Automate for desktop, it's like 110, 115 megs. So the built-in Windows 11, like the fresh copy of a built-in Windows 11 Power Automate for desktop is actually not the full-blown version, all right? So that's what it is. So here we go. I'm going to go and click on it now. And what you're going to see is an application open up. And this is what it is. It is your Power Automate for desktop. If this is your brand new first time going in, then it'll actually come up with the same sign-in authentication place that you do to go ahead and authenticate in. Now, I like to spend some time over here to talk about a few things. First of all, this home screen button was actually new. What they did was before it was right off the bat, my flows share with me an example. That's all there was. But they went ahead and added this additional home screen option to give this exact same effect as you would see on your Power Automate website. When you go to the cloud side, this is basically what it is. You are able to come into your home screen and you start to see this kind of stuff. Some examples. The ability to go ahead and actually, see some templates and all of that. This is why they added that home button. That's the only reason why they did that. And they give you more functionality. This is fairly new. It was just about a few months out, not something that was there out of the box. But I love the examples that's given over here. I love the way that you can actually go ahead and watch some of these videos. Gives you more up-to-date information right away here on your home machine. After that, this is the same functionality again from your browser side. So if you go up to your browser, you see over here, you've got your environments. Well, that's exactly the same thing. You've got your environments. From here, I'm able to see all the environments the exact same way I would be able to see on the Power Automate cloud. So point I'm trying to make over there, that if you've already been comfortable with building Power Automate cloud flows, you're already comfortable with going to the Power Automate side, seeing where the templates are, see where you go ahead and create my flows and then share it with someone. If you're already comfortable with that, then getting familiar with the desktop piece is very similar. That's why they always say the desktop flows is an extension of the cloud flows. The look and the feel is very similar over here. Now, remember, I went ahead and I'm using the pay as you go. So if you go and take a look over here on the top left, it says this environment is covered by organizations pay as you go subscription. So you might already caught the drift over there that when you go and do the pay as you go, it's not tied to a direct flow. It is tied to an environment level. So that's what I do. When I go and now switch specifically to my Power Automate RPA pad environment, this little ribbon comes up. So if I were to go and change it to something else, it'll go and load that environment. It'll go ahead and show me if I've actually got any desktop flows. Nothing over here in that case, but this thing comes up. You say, hey, you can go premium, and that sign completely disappears. So the point being over here is that it's actually really good that the system knows and it will update that, okay, it's this environment that you've got the pay as you go, and that little ribbon comes up over there. So it's kind of really user friendly. All right, so we looked at the home screen. Now what I want to do is get into the console of it, all right? In the console. Well, actually, let's spend a few minutes over here. Examples is my personal favorite. If you're like me, where you do a lot of reverse engineering, you've taken somebody's flows, you've taken somebody's apps, open them up and see, okay, how did the formulas happen, all that. That's how I learned a lot of my stuff in Power Apps and Power Automate and just things in general. So when the examples started coming up, I was really excited about this thing. I'll give you even some examples over here in the examples. Excel automation is actually really neat. The other one was web automation. Scripting is, any of you are desktop scripters, but you want to automate some of it where you literally want to, not have the schedulings done. Any of your scripts might require one or two human interaction type of steps. You will love the scripting piece, which is interesting because this type of scripting is not just for, so the point is that the Power Automate for desktop is not just a citizen developer type of thing. IT professionals will love this. You will heavily utilize this. You will make really good use of this for your day-to-day automation stuff as well. So like that's just the thing, Excel automation, scripting was a good one. Desktop, I make some of the examples. Web automation is actually, I took some of the advanced examples. So like, for example, I'll click on it. There was an intermediate one to grab the metadata page. I actually did some reverse engineering on that flow, and that's the example that I'm going to show you how to go and extract data from the tracking numbers. It was actually doing some reverse engineering for that. So just wanted to show you that there's a lot of options over here on the examples. Great places to do some reverse engineering. Cool. So I'm going to go. Actually, has any questions come up, Andy? Has anybody asked anything so far? I'll take your silence as you are shocked and just silent.
Yeah, no questions so far.
All right, cool. So I'm going to go and click on the new flow. This is, again, very similar to what you see on the cloud flows over here, right? So I'm going to say, demo right here comes up. Okay, so in the cloud flow, at this point, yes, you are asked if you want to give a name, but you are also asked which trigger you want to use. Now you can skip it on the cloud flow. You've got the option to skip it. In this case, it's much more simpler on the desktop one. You just give a name and then you create it. But here you can't skip it. You've got to give it a name. So that's the difference, right, in the desktop one. So I'll go and create now, and another window opens up. See, it's actually opened up on the right side. This is what it is. So it's not that once you have this one, the initial desktop, it'll open up another tab or it'll just replace this whole thing. No, this thing stays as is. It actually opens up another window altogether. But what happens is that the name that you give comes in, and now it is saying the status of that is currently editing. This is also what you have now. I haven't actually done any saving yet. So if I did not save this, if I just go and close it out, you actually just go ahead and lose that altogether. You see that the Charlotte Data SharePoint user group, we just lost it altogether. So just that's what the example I want to show you is that when you open something up, by default, it will actually go ahead and start opening this up, and it just goes ahead and adds that flow and puts the status as current ending. What you need to do as good stewards is come over here and save it. That's what you do. Is after you start adding your, your information, everything, start saving it. All right, that's the key thing. You'll actually see me a lot in my videos. I'll just always keep saying, do a few actions as good stewards, save it, save it, save it. That's what I do. All right, so let's focus a little bit on just this overall console that we are here for the Power Automate for Desktop in your flow. And I like to break this down into like 3 different sections. On your left side, you basically see all the actions, and this list of actions is ever growing. And what they've done is they've actually gone ahead and grouped it into a whole bunch of things. So for example, right on the top, you've got variables. You've got a whole bunch of functionalities inside the variables, and you have different types of variables too. I've actually done a whole video just on variables, talking about simple things where I'll go and create a variable. So if I were to go ahead and just drag this up, click on it, dragging it, and I'm dropping it over here, you can now go ahead and start adding your variable. So we know the variable naming convention, it's very simple. You just click on it and you start adding your, give it. You can either take the out of the box name, which is a new var, or what you can do is you can actually go and say that, okay, I want this to be a completely different name, because my personal naming convention is I always put in the prefix var, and then after that, I'll go and say something else. But here's what I did. Initially, when you just clicked on it, right there, if I went and grabbed that, if you clicked on it, there was this %. And now I just went ahead and overwrote on that. So what's going to happen? Well, nothing. I just hit enter and it just takes care of it. Is that user friendly? But that's just an example of variable. All right. So I'll go ahead and I'll put in anything that I want to do for variable, and I just go and save it. And now voila, on the right, you've got your flow variables. So that's just an example of how you can take stuff, all these actions, all these variables. You can go ahead and do, getting more information about the, creating 2 other types. You can either create an item. An item is basically, a list is basically just one column, multiple rows, but one column. So that's another type of variable. Then you've got table. Table is multiple rows, multiple columns. And so you've got, these type of variations over here. After that, you've got much more, so the way I have to look at this is in the variables, there's actually 2 categories of variable types, which actions that are given. One is what is the variable altogether, and that usually falls under the 3 categories I just said. You set the variable, or you can go ahead and actually create a list, simple list like that. What is the list name going to be right there? Or you can go and create a full data table with rows and columns. See, 0 rows, 0 columns. You can actually go and do this, adding in more columns. You can start populating the data right over here. So there's kind of these 3 different types of variables that you have, but then you can take that variable and you can manipulate that. So in the manipulation also, you've got so many more options. Remove duplicate items from the list. Amazing action which is available over here. You can go and do so much more of that. Other neat thing is generate random number. Andy, remember we used to actually have to build a full flow when we used to do the raffle ticket at the end of the, back in the day, SharePoint Saturdays, we actually met and we had raffle rewards in the end. We actually had a flow which would use the rand function and randomly pick up these names for the raffle ticket. That was actually a full flow. But over here, there's an action right here to go in and generate that random number. Like there's the variables itself has got so much more functionality that I was really very excited about that. And it gives you more and more additions over here. Now, there's a lot more that is available over here. So what I want to do is actually switch gears and just show you some demos that I've built, and I'll show you how these things work. We'll take a look at the flows and the actions. That way we'll start getting a little bit more understanding of what it is and how this thing works. And the demos I have are different categories. So let's actually start with something a lot more easier to work with. Let's actually just do this one, right? So I'm going to go and get updates of multiple tracking numbers. So I'll go and click on this pencil, so it'll get us into the editing mode. And what this one did was I actually had a don't get alarmed by this. It looks a lot bigger over here, but it was actually I actually helped a person build this real world scenario. What that person was doing was, it's one of the things which was very active during the holiday season because a lot of items were getting shipped, a lot of items had to be received. They had to go ahead and keep track of these emails that were coming in from the shipping department. In this case, it was UPS. UPS. Well, the emails came in, so they need to go and just extract that email the tracking number, save it on an Excel spreadsheet, and then after that, on a daily basis, see what is the status of that tracking information. So basically, the user had to manually go to the UPS website, and for each and every tracking one, they had to put in the number, get the status of that, and update that spreadsheet. This was manually done, and it was very hectic during the holiday season because there was lots of shipping going on. So the POC for Power Automate for desktop was surprisingly successful. So here's how this thing worked. All right. So first of all is for the sake of this demo, I have put a lot of display message screens so that you can actually, first of all, understand what a display message does. And then it'll also tell you at what stage of the flow it is. So the display message is one of those things where it'll just, a pop-up message comes up. And then it'll go ahead and just tell you what is going to happen in the following step after that. Now, one thing I really like about these display messages is, let's think about it. If you're on the browser and you have a display message, well, that's just one section directly on the browser. However, when you've got display messages coming up on your operating system, that is how deeply integrated Power Automate for Desktop is with your operating system, because it is telling your operating system that, hey, I want you to have a display message come up in this OS, and you need to give me the flexibility to modify however that display should be, which means the header, the text, the buttons. So you've got really good deep integration with the operating system to go ahead and do this kind of stuff. There's some examples I'll show you where I can go ahead and now towards the end, open up specifically folders in your local machine. You can do sorting, you can do filtering directly in your operating system. So, the Cloudflow, which is the Power Automate, is phenomenal. It is amazing, but it is always tied to that browser, and it is always tied to any API service that you're talking. The Power Automate for desktop is in full control of your desktop operating system, and you're able to manipulate and recreate a lot of the things that you might see. You download apps and you install apps, full-blown apps do these type of things as well, where you go ahead and have pop-up messages coming up and all that. Well, with your Power Automate for desktop, you can do the exact same as well. So that's why the display message, which I'll show you an example over here. So that's the message title. So when the box shows up, this will be on the message title. You can actually go and put in, I want to show you what kind of message it is. This will be the display of the message. Then the icons that show up. Well, is this of a type information? Is it of a type question, warning, error? And based on which one we select, even the sound of it changes. It's actually really interesting on that. After that, how many buttons do I want? The default is just one button. The default button is of type OK. I can put OK, cancel, yes, no, cancel, abort, retry, ignore. Like, it's kind of giving you a lot more options over here. Some of you who are Power Apps users might be saying, Daniel, in Power Apps Canvas, I can just put in a button and I can customize it however. Great. But just look at this scenario over here. Doesn't that kind of cover everything? So, be as a heavy user of Canvas apps as well, I, for the sake of my Power Automate for desktop, found this completely satisfaction. I didn't need anything else more than that. I didn't come up with any other scenarios where I needed more than this. It just helps me for that. Then you've got this functionality. And this is something that I want you to kind of closely follow. Is this keep message box always on the top? Very important to keep this toggled on, because if you're like Dan Beeson, if Dan Beeson's still on the cloud, you should sometimes ask him, Dan, show me your desktop. He has 1,000 icons on his desktop. He has at least 100 screens open up on his machine over there. And for someone like him, and if you're also like him, then someone like you want to keep this message boxes always on top, because then if you already have some multiple screens open, when Power Automate desktop opens up a screen, it will always be the one on the top. So having this toggled on, personally, I wish this was built. It was by default toggled on, but it's off. But apps and flows, these flows that I've been making, I always keep them toggled on because that's the best way to do that over there. And then after that, it's completely up to you. If you want it such that the display message will just close based on the button that you selected, then you can keep the timeout as completely, you can keep this functionality as off. I don't want the message to close automatically. I want the human interaction to do that, right? So that's just one example over here on the message boxes. So afterwards, the message box comes, then we go ahead and launch the Excel spreadsheet. So launch the Excel spreadsheet actually gives you the functionality to go ahead and actually get the launch. Now, here's one of the things. what am I doing? I'm going to go ahead and open up an existing document, or I've got the flexibility to open up a blank document. You know, if you open up a blank document, then you don't even need to tell where my Excel exe file is. It automatically knows where the Excel machine is. It's where the Excel application is. It's only when you're opening up a specific file, then you got to go and say, okay, where is this file? And then that you got to go ahead and start hunting where it is. It might be somewhere in my D drive, or it might be, where is it? Like it gives you all that flexibility. And then you go and basically find that file information over there. All right. So that's basically how this entire thing works over here. So I just need to make sure I've got my correct information here. So because I was testing my demos. Yep, it's on our D Power Platform demo. Yep, it's on the correct one. Cool. So that is basically to go ahead and launch the Excel spreadsheet. Then after that, I'm just doing another display message saying that, hey, we're in step number 2. Then I go ahead and use, this is my personal favorite step in action in Excel. It's that get the first free column and the row from an Excel spreadsheet. So let's think about that. All right, I'm going to randomly open up an Excel spreadsheet, so you'll actually see what that means. So I'll go up and open up. Let's open up this one. When you open up any Excel spreadsheet and you run that Excel spreadsheet through this action, what it does is after that, this action will basically say, okay, go and get me the next first free row and column. So it will not know that, okay, based on whatever your Excel spreadsheet is at that time, the next free row is 4 and the next column is D. But do you know what that information gives you? It automatically tells you now how many columns and the rows that you already have working over here. That's the big use of that, because if you did not have the ability to see when is the next free row, then you would not know how many rows above it are already populated. So just the fact that I would know that, okay, my next free row is going to be 4, I already know this spreadsheet has 3 rows populated. And so this has actually become, I don't know if it was designed for this way, but just for the sake of you having this action, you are immediately able to assist and get a good snapshot of what that spreadsheet is like, is the get free column row. And that's basically what I did, is that I needed to go ahead and get the tracking numbers from this place. So the tracking numbers is basically coming first is how many rows do I have? And I get that from this action over here. And so it'll basically go ahead and I set up a variable. In the variable, I want to go ahead and start keeping account of how many rows I'm going to hit. I have set a variable and I've gone ahead and set the variable value straight to 2, because the first part of the rows is always a header. So I'm going to start on 2. And then after that, we basically go through a loop. The loop will go through and basically open up the Excel spreadsheet. The Excel spreadsheet is already open. It's going to read it. And then after that, it will go ahead and trigger a child flow. This is another neat thing that I like about my Power Automate for desktop, because in the child flow, I've got the ability now for each and every time it gets an information from the spreadsheet, take whatever that is, which in our case is a tracking number. After you've got that, launch the browser, populate the field on the browser, and then go ahead and press the button, extract the data. It does a scrapping from the data and then close it. It goes through this step inside the sub-step as many times as there are spreadsheets available over there. What I like about the child flows is that when you go ahead and create, the subflows, I apologize, it's not child flow, it's the subflows. When you go and do that, it just directly opens up into another tab. Unlike in Power Automate on the browser side, when you on the cloud flows, over there we actually create child flows. It's a completely separate flow. You got to open up on a completely separate. You can open up on a different tab if you want, and then build it over here. Here, the terminology is subflows. It's just another tab, and you can call that directly in over there. All right. So this is basically what it is. It goes through the loop process of getting the data with the subchild. It goes ahead and does a split basically to clean up the text that I get, displays what the data is, and then it'll go and write that to the Excel spreadsheet. All right. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to make sure that the Excel spreadsheet is closed. I will now go ahead and let's just run it over here so you can actually see what is going on. Because technically, I don't need to just run it from here. I don't need to open up the flow. I could basically just come and hit play and we'll do everything else. But so that you can actually see what is going on, we'll go ahead and come over made, and we'll go and click on run. So you're going to see a lot of pop-ups coming up because remember the message was there. It'll stay for those 4 seconds, then it will close. Next, it launched the Excel spreadsheet on the bottom. So if you didn't notice it, it is down over here. All right. It's giving me the step number 3. Okay, create a variable that will keep count of the row. It went and created the variable. Now it's giving me step number 4, that the loop process is going to start. It actually opened up right here. My hands are here, by the way. It is doing this automatically, all right? So it grabbed the data from the Excel spreadsheet, which was the tracking number, opened up the site, it's pasting it in the FedEx tracking number, hits the track number, scraps this data, okay? And then it's presenting it to you, but it's also saving it into the Excel spreadsheet. That right list that you see in the bottom, you're not seeing that because there's happening automatically. The Excel spreadsheet also got closed, and then the flow is ended. Well, did it work or did it not work? Well, let's go see what happened. I'm going to go ahead and open up it was right here. And there you go. It actually went ahead and populated all of this information. It opened up the tracking system, the UPS website. It got the tracking number from here, pasted it, scrapped all that information, and directly put it back over here. This saved that user so much time. Now, granted, it was an attended one, so the user was there watching it, triggered it by itself, but it just automatically happened. There was nothing needed over here. The steps were all there, step by step, that was done. I'll share one tip on this thing. This was actually a collaboration of adding some of the actions manually and also using the recorder. The recorder is a great tool where if you go and click on it, it will actually allow you to start doing the recording. So I can actually click on the recording piece and say, hey, I want to do a record. And in the record now, it will go and say, what did I click on? So if I selected that, I said, Daniel did a left click on the Chrome on the desktop icons. And then if I go ahead and open up something else, like it's recording all of that. So this is how I was able to launch the browser. Select where the UPS tracking screen should be. So it recorded all of that. Directly go ahead and put the pasting. Like this is how I did the recording piece. It was actually really helpful from that standpoint. Nope, I'll make sure I reset it. But the recorder was actually a really helpful tool for that. And there were, like the whole concept is a lot more easier over here to do. Again, there was not a lot of heavy coding involved. If I personally thought anything was the most, heavy in this one, was this concept over here, was to actually go ahead and figure out how these whole permissions work. How these variables work. Because once I went and got the data, the text came in. I did the scrap from the website of the tracking number. The scrapping had to be, the data just came in different lines. So I had to basically use the text to split action. So I split it, and then now I was able to save it. So I just got it. Was it delivered or in progress? What was the tracking date? Like that, I think this, to me personally, was the most complicated one. Everything else, I was already familiar with building these cloud flows. The condition over there, going ahead and adding in multiple steps, the automatic actions. This was very, very similar to the cloud flow. So adoption over here was a lot more easier. There's actually some steps over here that I like, going ahead and collapsing it, and the ability to just click it and move stuff around. So much more easier over there. Other thing that I like is on the bottom section over there, it's actually telling you and giving you a full update on what is going on. It's actually telling you that, okay, you've got 2 flows, total of 19 actions. The total runtime was completely successful, and it is ready for the next flow. On the right, each and every variable that you have used, both inside the loop or outside the loop, it is telling you what those variables are. And for that run, it tells you what are the values inside the variable. And for stuff like this, which is the actual table, you basically double click on it and it'll tell you what the table is. The value 1 was delivered on, value 2 was the date. Like it's actually doing all of this directly for you. So the overall design of building this is so much more user friendly. I joke with the Microsoft product group, it's like, man, you guys need to talk to each other. The cloud flows and the desktop flows, you need to talk to each other, because there's so much neat things over here, which I wish was in the cloud ones. And I just the copy and the paste is like really neat functionality over there. So this is the first example that I want to show you. I want to also now I'll end with another great example, and then we can also talk a little bit about the Q&A sides. I don't want to save this. Yep, this is a good one. All right. So what I'm going to talk about is the deep integration now with the cloud and the desktop flow. And I want to give you a sneak peek of actually what I'm talking in the video that's coming out on Monday. The video that's coming out on the Mondays, I have a whole concept of repetitive tasks, like how to go and do a repetitive task. So here, things such as, and I'll explain this more in that video, but here's the concept of repetitive tasks. Based on the situations that are coming, how does the whole repetitive tasks work? The loop was an example that you saw from the UPS tracking number. So that's one set. Get the Excel spreadsheet, get all the data from it, and then go ahead and just do stuff inside the repetitive one. So that's one example. The one which I've used over here is we've got a desktop flow first. Here's a desktop flow. All right, you got to build a desktop flow. This desktop flow actually goes ahead and takes the data from the Cloudflow. What the Cloudflow does is it's monitoring your Outlook inbox. In your Outlook inbox, all the incoming emails, it is checking two things. First of all, does the incoming email have an attachment? So that's a check. Second condition is, does the subject anywhere say the term invoice? If it does, then the Cloudflow gets triggered. The Cloudflow first takes that file, saves it into in fact, why am I talking that? Let's just show it to you. It's like, oh, okay, so I'm right here in my flows, here in my cloud flows. It is loading this one right here. See, the trigger action is Outlook. In my Outlook, when the email comes in, this is what it is. Does it include the attachments? Yes, I need that condition over there. Subject filter, it has to have the term invoice in it. Doesn't matter if it's case sensitive or not. Also, I've gone ahead and saying here, if the email has to only have attachments, only when these conditions are met, yes, it has an attachment, and yes, the filter has invoice, then trigger this flow. That's like the main condition. After that, I've done a few steps. I took the attachment, and the attachment, I've gone and saved it in my OneDrive. This is pretty simple. This is a very standard procedure. And I could have done the exact same thing with the SharePoint document library as well. I could take the site, save it in the SharePoint document library. Here, after that is the fun part. This is where I've gone ahead and done the AI. AI Builder actually has an action called extract information from invoices. So I know that the data that is coming in is an invoice. So that attachment, specifically the attachments content, I send that over to AI. And then after that, in the AI, I've gone and said, okay, now I'm going to trigger my desktop flow, the desktop flow that I just showed you. But when I trigger the desktop flow, I'm going to send these things. I'm going to send the date, account, contact, and amount. Like, these are the things that the AI has automatically scrapped from the invoice. By the way, this is one of the scenarios where I didn't have to do any training. I didn't have to use my AI Builder credits to the training. This extraction from invoices action automatically does it for you. It will go and take the invoice, any invoice that you have. It will take it, and it does its best to extract all this information. And just when I click over here, you will see that it has all of these options out of the box. Some neat things that it does is that anything that has to do with the date, number, it'll give it to you in two forms: date format or the text format, or text format or the number format. It gives it to you in both the forms. That way you can do additional manipulation or just take it as a display as is, and you don't get confused with what the number format is. It gives you both that flexibility. So one of the things about questions that come up is, okay, how when you're running this flow, how did you go ahead and add these things over here? Because normally, if you're building a flow, if you're triggering a desktop flow, the only thing it needs to know is where basically the flow itself is. What is the flow? But how did you get these variables come in? For that, it's how I went ahead and created my flow. So remember the example that I just showed you about the UPS tracking extraction? There we saw a bunch of flow variables. For this scenario, you're going to add a bunch of input variables. When you click on the plus over here, you add these input variables. So when these input variables are added, and now you search for this flow on the cloud, then it'll know, okay, we need to provide some input data for this flow because it's looking for that. And then that is the moment you select that flow which we built, it automatically shows up, okay, these are the 4 inputs that need to be there. And that's what I populated from that flow there, from the what the AI provides on that side. So here we go. So that's the desktop one. Now the desktop, what it'll do is it'll actually go, I mean, after the data come through, remember that the 4 things that we get, it will go ahead and actually extract all that information okay, and then actually displays that full information to you. So what I'm going to try, not displays it, it opens up a desktop application. There's what it is. It's my legacy application. It will open up the desktop application. It selects specific locations in that application. It's actually really exciting. And then it will take the data from the Cloudflow, fill it in that desktop application, save it, and also close it. All of this is going to happen automatically. All right. So here we go. I'm going to now close this one off because I don't want anything to happen. I can go ahead and close this one off as well because we're not going to trigger anything. We'll keep an eye over here because stuff is going to happen. But now let's do this. All right. So I'm going to now send an email to my actual account. Remember the one that is getting monitored. I'm going to go ahead and say invoice. I'll just put an invoice for now. And next, I'll put an attachment. This is an invoice attachment, right? So that invoice attachment is going in. And I'm just going to leave it as this. So here I go. I'm going to go and click on send. The email has gone. All right. In fact, any second now, you will see that email come to my desktop. All right. And then after that, once it shows up over here, the email is what's going to trigger the flow. That is, the flow process will actually start automatically. So here you go. The invoice came in. Just wanted to show that to you. I'm just going to minimize this one altogether. So you'll actually see the activity that's going to happen. Watch this. You see the Contoso invoicing app of mine? That app is going to open up and you will see it. By the way, my hands are here, right? Foolproof. No, I'm not doing anything. You'll actually see me do this in my videos also. My hands are up and you will see that app open up any second now, and it'll automatically have the data put in. That data is coming directly from the Cloudflow. It'll populate the information in that and we'll close the app. Watch, this is going to happen automatically. So right now what's basically happening is that the delay, this flow tends to run anywhere from, I've seen it from 50 seconds all the way to a minute and 20 seconds. That's because the AI is processing your invoice. That is what tends to take the most time. So once that is finished, there's a step at the end of that Cloudflow to go ahead and trigger the desktop flow. So that's basically what we're waiting on. And it just spontaneously just immediately happens right over here. So I'm going to wait, I'm going to click on anything. There you go. It opened up, went to the invoices, took the data, it's pasting it in, amount, Canon, contact, amount, saves it, closes it. And now if I go up to my cloud flow, if I just refresh this guy a minute ago, and it's still running. So basically it's in the last step, right? It ran successfully. So let's take a look at what this thing happened. The email came in, it matched our needs. It went and created the file on my OneDrive. So you'll actually be able to see the file. It extracted the information, and then it went ahead and triggered the Cloudflow. So if you go to that successful one, it went ahead and directly extracted all that information from the one, things that came in, amount due, all of that. It pulled all of this information directly, and it triggered the desktop flow, and it automatically went in up and updated that. It's just took care of the whole thing directly. Right there. See, in fact, now the desktop flow is also stopped running, but you notice the whole thing happened automatically. And this is the deep integration of Outlook directly with the AI builder, did its work on the cloud. And after the AI builder was able to take, this is, by the way, my actual invoice, right? This is a stuff that I bought from Canon. And so I was able to, I got the invoice. I didn't do any training. The AI builder just extracted that. And once it gave me all the information, we triggered the desktop flow. And the desktop flow opened up the actual application, which is the Contoso application right here. Right there, it opens it up. And there you go. That's the new entry. Sorry, it's in the invoices. That's the new entry that we just added right there, right? The due date, that date is not today's date. That date is when the actual invoice had it, but it went and updated all of this automatically into your application. This is a legacy application. It has no API. It's just a very old application. If I click on it and if you say about that, this was built back in 2001. So I can't have any APIs to this. And that's a really good example of how the robotic process automation works for something like this. So I want to end with this another fun example that I have. There's actually a YouTube short that is coming out on this next week. Let me see if I can grab that for you right there. All right. Okay. So here is an example of how I can use my robotic process automation to clean up this clutter. So this, what I've shown you, is actually a single location I have in my desktop. And there's all kinds of files I've dropped over here. You see all these files, it's like different file types too. There's images, there's basically document type files, images files, presentation type files, spreadsheets, videos. And then if I can't decide on what it is, I've got to catch all. So what I did was I went ahead and just created these folders because I want a way to go ahead and now clean up this mess that I have. Now, granted, this mess, I've put it in a folder. This mess could be on your desktop. Hint, hint, Dan Beeson. I'm just kidding. Like this is basically what it could be. Is a location where you want to go ahead and do some cleanup. Now, jokes aside, this could use for a actual a real life scenario where you've got this inbox or inbox folder, initial temporary folder where files are coming in, and based on the file type, you want to relocate that into some location. You might actually have a reason for that. Well, this desktop app is perfect for that. All right, so let me show you quickly what that flow is all about. And that's what it is, repetitive tasks for Switch. So what it does is I've used basically the switch case function for this thing. It is able to now go ahead and first start off, is I'd use the get files in a folder just to make sure my folder is still, because sometimes I test this on my other machine as well. Platform, Power Automate, yep, that's the one, all right? And so after I go and get these files, it is stored into a location called, it's a variable over here. The variable produced is called as files. What I'm doing for each item in the file, I'm going and doing a switch and a case. So if the file contains any of these things, it contains an MP4, well, if it contains an MP4, then go ahead and move the file into the videos folder. Next thing as well, if it contains an MOV, extension MOV, also move it to the video folder. Otherwise, then next thing we're doing is I'm going to look at documents for the docs folder. So right here, if the file contains a .doc, move that into my docs folder. If it contains a .pdf, move that into my docs folder. I'll share a little tip with you. When I build this, what you do is you add one case, you go ahead and add an action below it, then you collapse it. After you collapse it, it tells you also, hey, there's an action in it. That is where you go ahead and do a copy. Because when you do when you do a copy inside it, it's only copying that action. But when you collapse it, it copies that entire case. So that's what I did is I went and just created one, copied it, and then afterwards I just went and did a lot of pasting. Basically just right click, paste it, and that's why I was able to create that flow so much faster. So each of these are different cases. Like you see on the bottom one, if it's a .csv, we'll go ahead and drop it into the spreadsheets one. And then after that is a catch-all. Like in the default case, is if none of the criteria for any of the file extensions were met over there, we'll then go and put that into my my catch-all section. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and now click on the run, and we're going to keep an eye on this guy. So he is now running. In the back end, you can see he's running. He's keeping an eye on this one. As you can see, this guy is slowly getting a little smaller, right? He's cleaning up. The list over here on the bottom is dropping. As you can see, it's slowly dropping. But the flow on the back end, it's still running. It's still running because it's going through for each and every file. It's a case, and that's the current item. So it's going through. It's cleaning up, slowly cleaning up. And see, some of these files are 14 megs. Some of them are 6 megs. It's doing a fantastic job cleaning it, cleaning it, cleaning it, cleaning it. And then also, after it's done, you'll see the flow in the back end finished. But if I go in over here, you see catch-all, like weird type of file names. I didn't, I had JPG. Well, this is a JPEG. It didn't know what that was. Zipped files, HTML files, this is raw data. Did not know. I had no switch case for that. So it dropped it in the catch-all. Docs, we had good. We had the Word doc. We have PDF. So it captured all of that, all the way down to videos. It picked up all my videos. It picked up the spreadsheets. To spreadsheets specifically, I trained it. Excel, .csv. It picked all of these up over here. So you just see the beauty of it. Granted, I'm saying this as a joke, as a fun thing, but there's so much real life implications of stuff like this. You're holding folder to catch all of something, and then taking in information from there, putting it. Some tasks that you might have on a repetitive basis, you might have tasks like this on a server that you could use something like that. Nobody's stopping you. You don't have to do this on a desktop anyway. You could do stuff like this, robotic process automation, unattended, in on a server or dedicated VDIs, and then stuff like that. Cool. So I'm going to go back to my slide deck and see if you've got anything. Nope, I think that installation of the doc. Yeah. The only last things I want to talk about was remember when we were doing the example about the UPS tracking number. I used my Google Chrome. You can use an Edge as well. You can use Firefox as well. Not a big fan of Firefox, but you can use that Firefox. Any of them, you just need to go ahead and add your extension over there. So for example, in my extension, if I click on that, you will see that I've got the robotic Microsoft Power Automate there. That add-in needs to be pre-installed in order for it to do the robotic process automation where it launches the browser and does all the stuff. You need to have that extension installed as well. That's just the additional thing over there. But other than that, I am actually done. Any questions waiting for me, Andy?
Yeah, Will had a couple of questions for you. One he's got is how do you teach your workflow to navigate a third-party website?
When you say so it's the launch. Let's go to the flow. I had the one for the repetitive, or which one did I do that one? Yep, right there. I click on it. Italians. I only have 3 questions. This it was the launch one in the subsection. Launch new Microsoft Edge. That's what it is. So from there, my third-party website was ups.com tracking HTML. What was that? One tip on that, Will, is that when you go to these websites, just watch the URL. Like when you click on the URL, like for example, this one tracking HTML. These websites, for whatever reason, they go ahead and add like an ampersand or a question mark and just put all that other stuff. Clean that up. Like over here, I just made sure that I ended with the .html and I put it over here. It functions a lot more easier when you do that. Another tip on this one, Will, is when you open it up, I went with this one, is the Windows state normal. But for your scenario, you can force it to be completely maximized, which means that it'll open up the full browser over there. Some neat little tips that I picked up when I was testing this as well. For this scenario, because that website it's just that specific page of that website is just it's simple, so I didn't have any concerns about it. But if your website is a really too big one, then you can actually go ahead and change it. See by the way, see it happened over here. All this jazz that comes through. I know that
How does the
link.
workflow know where to click?
Say that again.
How does the workflow know where to click? Is it just a recording of like the
Yep,
XY
it's the recorder.
coordinate?
It's the recorder that I use. So when you go in and you just, I'll just pretend like we're doing a recording. All right. So in the recorder, I clicked on it. Now, and I selected right here is where it says it went and clicked on it. Then there is additional, once I've done that, we've clicked on it. Now you want to go ahead and put some data in. So let me show you that step. Do and cancel.
Is that what you said? You need to set up a browser extension.
Yep.
For the okay,
text.
so that's where the browser extension comes into play, right?
Exactly. And I've done a full detailed video on this, Will, because what blows my mind about these things is the UI elements. When you click on it on that browser, what we just saw was it went ahead and, I highlighted where the tracking is. But if you go over here on the right side, it is actually telling me on that web page right down. And if some of you are familiar with HTML or, all that scripting, that click, it picks up what is the actual
Nice.
code.
So it's not the XY coordinate, it's actually picking up on the HTML elements and identifying the classes and IDs.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. So it doesn't matter if it was whatever was the screen size or anything, it doesn't matter. It went and picked up directly the actual control on that page directly with its control name. Like that, if you look at the elements, this just blows my mind because I'm not a developer. There's no way I could know this. I mean, granted, I can hit the F12 on the developer, and hover around, but Power Automate automatically does this. Like that's why I create a full video on this topic to just
This is
show
the kind
power.
of thing in the old days you'd have to do like screen scraping and then like parse through like a mountain of HTML.
You would first have
functions.
to go there. And we've got a UPS. You would just have to go to that website. Then you actually start need to put up your developer tools, open that up, take that, and then start highlighting it. And then you start getting all these names on the top. You see over here that all these things start coming in. That is what you're going to get. You will actually have to add your code on the right side. See what is the div and everything. I didn't have to do any of this. The desktop automatically did it for me with the recorder. That was, very almost like very humbling experience. Like, dang, this thing is really good, man. Like I didn't have to know any of this. Just do the recorder. It reminds me so much of the Excel recorder that we use when you're recording steps. it automatically goes and adds that like Visual Studio code, visual scripting code into it directly. Same kind of concept over here. It went and grabs the actual HTML, the browser information for that page and directly adds it into your action. It's kind of phenomenal. On the flip side, though, there has been a time where I did a recording of I do use the recorder to go ahead and basically I went to a website, and the website I was doing a search. I would search for something. It would filter down specifically items that I was looking for, and I would scrap it from there. Well, the website actually happened to update to a newer version, and all those naming conventions changed. So my flow broke. So I was like, oh, well, I could not fix this. I just did a re-recording. And anytime you start a recording, it'll actually tell start of an auto-generate action and then end of an auto-generate action using the recorder. So you always know that, okay, these are the ones that I need to fix. So
yeah, that's something you're always going to have to watch out for is the website change. But luckily, like a site like UPS, where you're getting a tracking number, that's going to be super reliable, not going to change very much.
Yeah. All right, let's take a look at what the tally says. Do you have any use case example for an IT service desk and or data center administration? IT service desks. One thing you could do, and this was interesting because for something like this, though, there's a lot of requirements. If you're going to have your IT department, like, say, if people are having specific problems, you want them to go ahead and, go to this one, and this is good for some applications, when an application is breaking, that application has a very helpful log file, but that log file is hidden like 10 folders deep, and that, it's hidden and all that. Instead of you walking the person through, you could actually have a Power Automate for desktop already installed. It already has this action in, and you can trigger this one from the cloud. So you could actually have a button or something, and you can trigger it over there. Now, there's a lot more logistics in, because you'll have to know what the machine is. You'll have to do all that extra work in it. But that's one of the examples of the IT administrators, is that you don't have to have the users walk you through. You don't have to walk the users through to get that very specific log file you may have. This thing can do that for you. So that's one example over there. What about security measures when capturing, importing data being imported from the external sites or email attachments? Remember, when you're doing it, the attended flow, it's all tied to the user. You can only do what the user has access to. It's the unattended one. That's where you can basically go all out. Is if the user who has access to the machine doesn't have all the access, well, then you can go ahead and actually have a local admin level access, which, by the way, unattended flows need local admin accesses anyway, because you'll be opening up apps, you'll be doing stuff. It should have access to all of that. But the flow can do only what you're allowing it to do. So if your account that you're using to run attended or unattended, it only has access to do these things, well, then that's the only actions that the flow will be able to do. So don't get too concerned about, man, this is a hacking tool. No, it's all tied to what permission levels does the user allow. Now, PowerShell integration to launch scripts. There was in the examples, if you go and take a look at the examples, scripting, there is the ability to go ahead and do some extracting and also display PowerShell out scripts. So basically, it'll go ahead and do some Java scripting, so you can launch it. You can display. You can go ahead and scrap the data from the script outing. Like the scripting one is actually a really good one available. And just get inside it, do some reverse engineering. I lost my chain of thought. There was something else I was going to tell you about. It'll come to me. I talked about the scripting piece. There was one. Oh yeah, we're talking about potentially this being a any security concerns. So I was talking to the Houston UG about this stuff. I'm not going to tell the name of the person. Houston UG, and the question that came up is, hey Daniel, we're looking at using this, but we're kind of having a problem. Is a multi-factor authentication required? So the multi-factor authentication, and they do have that RSA app ID on the desktop application, and we haven't been successful in the Power Automate for desktop recording, because they said they are able to record, but it said that RSA ID resets every 30 seconds. So the timing is something we cannot match She says, so what are your suggestions on that? And I just paused for a bit. I said, hey, that is hacking. I mean, you don't want to do stuff like this. So I said that for stuff like that, you want to use one of those scenarios because you're authenticating to some website. Why is that account that you want has multi-factor authentication? Azure AD has policies where you can go and say that, okay, if you're either this account or if you are calling it from this IP address, don't do multi-factor authentication. Go that route. Don't try to beat the system by coming up with all of these other things. Do it the right way. Because if you're going to start using the flow to go ahead and yeah, you could be violating a ULA as well. I say exactly. Don't go through that route of hacking the system. Go to the right route. If you want to do this, go ahead and say, okay, this is going to be a dedicated account. This is a faceless or a service account, not a user, which means I don't need that multi-factor authentication. It's going to be run from this machine on the machine network, so you can you can comply by the IP addresses, comply by the users, put the correct policy assigned for that user. Don't use multi-factor authentication, because if you're using automation and robotic process automation to go through that route, that sounds a little bit like hacking. So that's how I ended that conversation over there. So yeah, hopefully that helps with all your the three questions that you had over there.
And those sites may provide some API or something like that that you could potentially tap into, which would be the intended route.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So I actually have done a full 8-part video series on this. So if you go to my YouTube channel, what I want to show you is in the video, in my actually contents, yeah, playlist. There's a Power Automate for desktop. I've got 8 videos on this one. So in my 8 videos, it's right from introduction to Power Automate. Right after that, I went straight to the desktop recorder, because that just saves you so much time doing the actions by yourself. So I did that. I planned it this way. Like, let me show you how to do the recorder, because that'll do all of these much faster. Then the message boxes, because when you're starting to do these actions, you want to know how these message boxes are. Variables, remember that I told you that there's kind of at least 3 types of variables. There's the set variable, list, and then the table. I've walked you through all of that. Desktop management, machine management capability. This helps you to get started with, if you are planning to do the unattended ones. Like, you need to know how this capability is there. This is also, setting the introduction one for the future one, where you could build a full enterprise with this. You can have multiple VDR, machines with the application installed over there, and you can go ahead and put in multiple machines, put them in queues in case there's a lot more load. Like, that's one of those new features that are coming out on that. In fact, let me show you that. That's pretty phenomenal. Oh yeah, we can do that too. So in the monitoring piece, desktop flow runs, it actually tells you, so let's take a look at this. In my desktop flow runs for that, it's actually keeping track of how my desktop flow runs are running. It's able to show me all the things that I've had running over here. That so far my desktop flows on my desktop, this was the machine. This machine that I have named right now, it is called as my Power Tower machine. So many flows run. What type was it? Is it attended, unattended? It's telling me all of those things. But this is the next generation one that is coming out. Is now I can go ahead and start creating a full group, and that group will do only one specific thing. And in addition to that, it is now going to go ahead and give you the capability to have hosted machines. So you can pay for an additional price, and instead of you coming up with all of these, building all the machines and setting it up, it is doing that automatically for you. The hosted machines, VM machines, like, they are really expanding this directly. I'm super stoked about this because, granted, it again depends on what your automation process will be, but now you can create a full, machine grouping VMs out there to do dedicated things, and you can group it. Like, this VM group needs to do only one specific thing versus the other thing. It's pretty sophisticated how it's building on top over here. Yeah, and so the last part was about see how I go with the pay as you go. So in the pay as you go, I set it up for the subscription. I went and put a budget. Like I just make sure that if anything, if it goes over $50 a month, I just need an alert. But after that, it's able to actually show me in detail how all my flows are running. Like what is my cost? What is the attended versus the unattended? I really like this cost analysis one over there. It's for me, I'm mostly getting dinged from the price standpoint. It is for the unattended one. That unattended is where I'm getting the charge mostly because I already have a Power Apps per user and a Power Automate per user license. So anytime I build a attended one, it's part of that license. But I do not have the unattended one. And so for that, I'm doing the pay as you go. And it shows me, like how my uses have been. And just to be on the safe side, I've also gone in and set myself an alert over there. So love this analytics, which is already then Azure for a subscription. That's been there for years. It applies over here for the pay as you go for the RP as well. Cool. Thanks for posting that link. Oh, thanks, Will. I'm still learning, man. I mean, as you saw, I kind of favored towards only a few of the different types of actions. Like I was just sticking to most of them. SharePoint preview is new. I'm interested to see that. I actually spent some time. It's the ability basically just to handle files and what you want to do with files. So you could automate stuff. I just want to take stuff from my machine, put it up over there, machine, put it up over there. Like this is going to be a lot more interesting thing to do. It's in preview, so it's kind of one of the things where you play with it, but don't go production. There's so much more on IBM, Google Cognitive Services. That's interesting. Microsoft Cognitive Services. So it's just one of those things. Like just like the desktop flow, it just depends on what your need is, and then who's using it for what. The desktop flow, same thing. You've got all kinds of functionalities, and just helps with stuff like this. Cool. I don't have anything else. If you've got any questions, go ahead and post it. I mean, in my YouTube channel, feel free to ask questions over there. You have, on our ping me on Twitter or something. We can always chat over there. So hopefully this at least got you a little idea of what to do, and definitely start playing with it. Keep in mind that you might already be paying for this, so start leveraging it if you've got any of those licenses. That's all I have, Andy.
All right, that was awesome, Daniel. You went way beyond the and deeper than I anticipated. So this is really good stuff. We will get this posted to our YouTube channel in the next couple of days, so you'll be able to check that out at KSIG YT. We're on YouTube, and go back and watch the video at your own pace, pause it wherever you need, and dive deep into it. We'll add some links to the description as well for some of the things that Daniel has referenced throughout. But big round of applause, Daniel. Awesome stuff as always. Make sure you check out Daniel's YouTube channel, the video walkthrough there, but also all the other work that he's done through the Power Platform and Microsoft 365. He's got a plethora of information. It'll keep you busy for weeks, and it's all for free. But also be sure to hit up his subscription, because time is money, and he puts a lot of time into doing this. But Daniel, thanks so much for being here tonight. Thanks everybody for joining in. I see there's a question in the chat window for a couple of the socials. We'll drop those in the chat window as we're wrapping up. I do want to thank everybody here for attending. Again, coming up in March, we've got Jeff Abels from C5 Insight. He's going to be talking about OpenAI and Microsoft 365. So definitely stick around for the March talk. That one's going to be a lot of fun. And with that, thank you so much, everybody. And we will see you in the next one.
Cool.